The world is shifting in ways many of us are not prepared to fully comprehend. These shifts are not merely political or economic. They go far deeper. Today, I want to talk to you about something you may not have considered, but is crucial to understand. How the control and consumption of information have changed dramatically in the past century, and how these changes are setting the stage for something far worse than most of us realize. The world as we know it was relatively stable for centuries. Communication and information spread slowly. People relied on word of mouth, handwritten letters, and limited print media for news and updates. Communities were tightly knit, and trust was often built through personal relationships and direct experiences. But 100 years ago, with the introduction of the radio, everything changed. At first, the change was moderate. People were excited to gather around their radios and listen to news, broadcasts, music, and stories. It connected communities and brought a new sense of immediacy to the dissemination of information. But even then, radio was a controlled medium. Only a few entities determined what was broadcasted, shaping the narrative and public opinion. Then, in the 1950s, we entered the television era. From the 1950s through the 1980s, media consumption surged dramatically. Television became the dominant medium for news, entertainment, and information. Families began spending hours each day watching TV. This era shaped our perceptions of the world, not because of first-hand experience, but because of what was presented to us on a screen. However, our choices were still limited. There were only a few stations, and they held immense power over what millions of people saw and believed. The family dinner table conversations were often influenced by the evening news, and societal norms were subtly molded by TV programming. In the 1990s and early 2000s, the Internet era began. It seemed revolutionary at first. For the first time, people had access to information at their fingertips. But adoption was gradual. Dial-up internet connections were slow, and the internet was primarily used for specific tasks like checking emails or browsing websites. It was a new way to consume media, but it had not yet reshaped daily life. However, the seeds of a new era were planted, as the internet's ability to connect people globally began to expand beyond anything previously imagined. Then came the smartphone era around 2007, and everything changed. Unlike any period before it, this era brought a sustained and massive surge in media consumption. For the first time, people had access to media 24/7. Apps, streaming services, social media, and mobile games became integral parts of daily life. Our routines, our thoughts, and even our values were reshaped by what we consumed on these devices. Smartphones transformed how we interact with the world. No longer were we passive recipients of information at scheduled times. We became active participants in a never-ending cycle of media. Notifications, alerts, and updates constantly vie for our attention, creating a sense of urgency and dependency. Let me give you a picture of where we are today. According to Statista, as of 2023, the average person in the United States consumes media for 12 hours and 31 minutes every day. This includes television, newspapers, magazines, radio, and digital platforms. By 2026, this figure is projected to surpass 13 hours and 40 minutes per day. Globally, the average person spends over 2 hours and 24 minutes daily on social media alone. In total, many individuals dedicate more than 87 hours per week to media consumption. Let that sink in for a moment. 87 hours per week. Compare that to sleep, If a person sleeps for 8 hours a day, that adds up to 56 hours a week. People are now spending more time consuming media than they are sleeping. And what is even more concerning is the impact this has on their minds, their spirits, and their worldview. People's minds are being programmed right before our eyes. Every video, every article, every image they scroll past leaves an impression. Whether consciously or subconsciously, these impressions shape their beliefs, fears, desires, and priorities. Platforms like Meta, formerly Facebook owned by Mark Zuckerberg, boast billions of monthly active users. Meta's ecosystem includes apps like Instagram, WhatsApp, and Facebook Messenger. X, formerly Twitter, owned by Elon Musk, and Instagram each have hundreds of millions of users. Streaming services like Netflix, Disney+, and Amazon Prime dominate global entertainment. These platforms are not neutral. They are controlled by a small group of powerful corporations and individuals. This concentrated control over information and entertainment is unprecedented in human history. Now imagine this. Imagine this hypothetical scenario. What happens when the Antichrist gains access to this infrastructure? The Bible makes it clear that in the last days, the Antichrist will have worldwide influence. Revelation 13:7 says, "And authority was given him over every tribe, tongue, and nation." He will not only have political power, but also control over commerce and communication. Revelation 13:16-17 warns us that no one will be able to buy or sell without the mark of the beast. But how will he achieve this global control? It will be through the very systems that are already in place today. With people consuming over 87 hours of media each week, far more time than the average person spends sleeping, it's clear how powerful media has become in shaping thoughts, beliefs, and behaviors. This constant exposure to news, entertainment, and social media means that people's minds are continuously influenced by what they hear and see. This is prophecy unfolding right before our eyes. The systems of global control are being established, and most people are sleepwalking into it. They believe they are simply being entertained or informed, but in reality, they are being conditioned. They are being prepared to accept lies and reject the truth. Why do you think sins that used to once shock the world are now the norm? The Apostle Paul warned us about this in 2 Thessalonians 2:9-12, which says, "The coming of the lawless one is according to the working of Satan, with all power, signs, and lying wonders, and with all unrighteous deception among those who perish, because they did not receive the love of the truth, that they might be saved. And for this reason, God will send them strong delusion, that they should believe the lie." We do not know exactly what the nature of this delusion is, but what we do know is that it is coming. Furthermore, it is important to note that people are unknowingly being conditioned, molded by the relentless flood of carefully curated content designed to distract. This is not a coincidence. It is a strategic move in the spiritual warfare we are living in. And if you are not careful, you will become ensnared by these weights that entangle your mind and spirit. Hebrews 12:1 refers to these distractions when it commands us to lay aside every weight. Hebrews 12:1-2. "Therefore we also, since we are surrounded by so great a cloud of witnesses, let us lay aside every weight, and the sin which so easily ensnares us, and let us run with endurance the race that is set before us, looking unto Jesus, the author and finisher of our faith, who for the joy that was set before him endured the cross, despising the shame, and has sat down at the right hand of the throne of God." The context here is crucial. The Christian life is compared to a race, and you cannot run that race effectively while carrying unnecessary burdens. The weights are not necessarily sinful in themselves, but they hinder your progress in faith. This is exactly what we face today in an age where media consumption dominates every waking moment. It's not a sin to have social media. It's not a sin to listen to podcasts while commuting to work or to watch films and TV shows in your free time. Many of us incorporate these activities into our daily lives, but that's precisely the subtle danger. Hebrews uses the word wait because these things are not inherently sinful, but they can still slow you down, drain your spiritual focus, and weaken your endurance in the race of faith. The times you live in are entirely different from the days of Enoch, Elijah, or Daniel. These men walked with God in ways that allowed them to hear His voice clearly. They did not have to contend with the constant bombardment of media and information that we face today. They lived in times when focus and stillness before God were possible without interruption. Today, however, you are living in an era of constant noise, and this noise is not random. It is orchestrated, designed to reshape how you think, what you prioritize, and ultimately, how you live. In the past century, we have witnessed a dramatic shift in how information is consumed. For most of human history, communication was slow, personal, and local. But now, a few powerful corporations control global information streams. Platforms like Meta, X, TikTok, and major streaming services dictate what billions of people see, hear, and believe. These platforms do not merely exist for entertainment. They are tools of influence. Through algorithms, they learn your habits, fears, and desires. They know how to capture your attention and keep it, feeding you a continuous stream of curated content that shapes your worldview. Imagine spending 87 hours a week consuming media and only a few minutes in prayer. How can you expect to hear God's voice clearly? How can you expect to resist deception if you are filling your mind with worldly values and distractions every day? This is why Paul tells us in Romans 12:2, "Do not be conformed to this world, but be transformed by the renewing of your mind." You must take control of what you consume. If you don't, the world will do it for you, and it will lead you down a path of spiritual numbness and ultimately destruction. The most dangerous thing about these weights is that they often feel harmless. What's wrong with catching up on the latest news or watching a TV series to relax? On the surface, there's nothing wrong with these activities. But it's the accumulation of these distractions that weighs you down. Over time, your focus on God diminishes. You begin to prioritize entertainment over spiritual disciplines. Prayer feels like an obligation rather than a lifeline. Reading the Bible becomes difficult because your mind has been trained to crave quick, stimulating content. So, my question to you is this: in those 87 hours of media consumption, how many hours are you spending consuming the things of the Lord? In Romans 12:2, Paul urges us, "Do not be conformed to this world, but be transformed by the renewing of your mind, that you may prove what is that good and acceptable and perfect will of God." Renewing your mind requires intentional effort. It means turning off the noise and filling your mind with things that are true, noble, just, pure, lovely, and praiseworthy. But let me be clear. This is not just about limiting your screen time. It is about discerning what you are allowing into your heart and mind. Proverbs 4:23 says, "Keep your heart with all diligence, for out of it spring the issues of life." If you allow the world to fill your heart with fear, lust, greed, and pride, those things will manifest in your life. But if you allow God's word to fill your heart, you will bear the fruit of the Spirit: love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, goodness, faithfulness, gentleness, and self-control. Finally, running this race requires endurance. The Christian life is not a sprint, it's a lifelong journey. Endurance comes from staying connected to God, feeding your spirit with His Word, and seeking His presence daily. When you lay aside the weights that hinder you, you'll find that your spiritual strength increases. You'll hear God more clearly, walk in greater peace, and be better equipped to resist the deceptions of the enemy. Let this message be a wake-up call. You are living in a time of great spiritual warfare. The systems of this world are designed to distract and weigh you down. But you don't have to be a slave to them. Lay aside the weight, fix your eyes on Jesus, and run your race with endurance. The great cloud of witnesses is cheering you on. Will you press forward or continue carrying what you were never meant to bear? The choice is yours.